I think we all have a dream or something that we want to achieve, whether it be professionally or personally. And I would just say, stop what you're doing and put pen to paper. Just do it.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a life podcast. It's a story podcast. It's a bit of an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest's journey, finding out what makes them who they are and all that they do, digging into the parts of their story that we otherwise wouldn't get to hear about. I am your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I'm a creative of many kinds, a self-employed maker of many things. And as you probably guessed, one of those things I do is indeed podcasting, as I bring you a couple different shows at this point. But this one right here, I bring you every other Monday, as well as sporadically on Fridays for those 15-minute Friday episodes. And I'm able to do all of that, plus create an entire podcast network of my own, due to some rad supporters and sponsors that I'm going to tell you about right now. And then we're going to hop into this week's conversation. You know how it's been going down here lately on the show. I'm going to tell you about these wonderful supporters, and then we'll get to it, because first we are supported by a few wonderful friends in this episode. But the first one I'm going to tell you about is our longest reigning supporter thus far. It's our friends over at Promo West Productions. Promo West is one of the lead concert promoters, not just here in Ohio, but in a few different places. But right now, I've got some Ohio concerts to tell you about. So if you're interested in catching a live show, then pay attention to the following list, because maybe you'll want to go and check out one of these upcoming concerts brought to you by Promo West. And they've got all of the following going down at Kemba Live here in Columbus. On Friday, May 12th, it's City and Color. On Saturday, May 20th, they've got Brit Floyd. And then Hippo Campus on May 30th. And then finally, Les Claypool's Fearless Flying Frog Brigade on May 31st. And I challenge you to say that last one 5 times fast. So if you want to grab tickets to any of those, you can jump to axs.com, or as always, for more information on these or any other upcoming concerts. If you want to find out who's coming to town in general here in Ohio or at any of their other venues, you can find all of that information over at promowestlive.com. We are also supported by our friends over at River and Rich. Now, if you're ever down in the Franklinton area, if you're over at 400 West Rich, at Land Grant, Chrome Edge, or something, you've probably noticed that strip of buildings across the street that houses things like Maker's Social, One Line, Roy G. Biv, the brand new Franklinton Market, my new favorite place over there. Well, that is River and Rich, and they're making space in Franklinton for it to somehow get even a little bit cooler. So where can you live, work, and play all at the same time? Well, I mean, this is clearly an ad promoting River and Rich, so the answer is River and Rich, because living there goes further than just choosing a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or townhouse-style apartment. Those are all there for sure, but what the goal of River and Rich really is to embrace and connect with the Franklinton community, and that is a community that is very art-driven, creative-driven, and one that pushes for a unique and interesting lifestyle, and they add to that in a lot of ways. They feature local art throughout many of their spaces, including pieces from Scrawl, and they continually add murals into their community as it grows. Now, the goal is to make River and Rich not just a place to go home to, but also a piece of living art in itself. It really is more than apartments. It's really a full lifestyle. A resident favorite feature is the local businesses that take up their current retail spaces. They have Yellow Brick Pizza, One Line Coffee, a wonderful plant shop called Jewelweed, the DIY craft bar Maker's Social, and of course, a lot more. The most recent addition is the Franklinton Market, a convenience store that carries Jenny's ice cream, pet supplies, everyday household essentials, and of course, late night snacks for those creatives like me that are staying up late over at 400 West or in the surrounding area. I'm telling you, Franklinton Market really came in clutch in a lot of ways. But also, other than that, River and Rich just aims to create a living space that supports these local platforms and the surrounding culture that Franklinton has built. It's true honestly, it's not just a random group of buildings that they're making to take up space. They really are trying to grow with the surrounding community. So if you do want to go check any of this out, they offer guided and self-guided tours. So come view an apartment anytime. You can visit their website at riverandrichcolumbus.com. Also, check this out. Because you listen to this podcast, I'm going to help you get a freaking apartment, because now new applicants can receive up to half off their security deposit if you go and let them know and you use the code WYDHPOD. So again, for more information, please contact River and Rich directly. Certain restrictions might apply, but hop over to riverandrichcolumbus.com to get things going and go join the colorful life at River and Rich. So, as always, a huge thank you to my sponsors for this week's episode. If you want to go to a concert in Columbus, or if you want to live here in Columbus, definitely go check out all that both Promo West and River and Rich have to offer you. But I have something to offer you right this very moment, and that, well, to the surprise of nobody, probably, is a rad new conversation in this week's episode. I mean, of course, what else would it be, right? You know what you clicked on, you know what you tapped on, so let's get to it. This week, I sit down with Spencer Saylor, who many of you may be most familiar with him as the creator of the pizza company Wizard of Za, that started as a wild pandemic hobby here in Columbus and grew to actually be sold by Spencer. And yes, we dig into those details of how all of that happened and why and what Spencer's feelings on all of it are, while of course diving into his story in general and how he got to where he is and where all this love for food and cooking even comes from. As usual, it's all that and more right here in this episode of What You Don't Hear. So let's dive in. Episode 83 with Spencer Saylor. Dude, let's make this happen. Spencer, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Of course, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. We are meeting for the very first time. So this is one of those episodes.
It is. It's another case of have followed each other on social media and like semi-acquaintances via that way. So it's good to meet you in person for the first time and have the opportunity to get to know each other over a podcast.
I know. What better way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You've probably heard me say at this point, it's my cheat code for making friends.
Yeah, absolutely. No better way. No better way.
Exactly. No better way to make a friend than to record it and then share it with everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. It, right? Absolutely.
So I'm really interested to dive into so many different things with you because, I mean, the only thing I know you of, like what the thing that connected me to you was Wizard of Za.
Sure.
But I feel like there's like so much more that you do, and I can tell that there's like a lot of other things that you're involved in, maybe even more on like the back end of that. And like, again, this is me assuming up front, but like, and I don't know the story and I'd love to dive in, but like, it almost seemed like Wizard of Za was like this thing that you did like based off of underlying passions for just like food or cooking or whatever it may be. Like, is that an accurate guess?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. Wizard of Za was kind of the culmination, I guess, of a lot of my passions and history and work experience kind of coming together to form that moment. My friends joke a lot that I'm kind of all over the place in terms of passions and a bit of a Renaissance man, I guess. I love a lot of different things, mainly all within the field of creativity, which I know you're a creative, so you get it too.
Totally.
And so while Wizard of Za was kind of that big key point for me of that all coming together, I do have quite a few different passions, whether it be within the food industry or music industry or different creative pathways that I still love to enjoy and take part in every day. And so I think people kind of see that and they're always kind of confused, like, what are you up to these days? Because they can't quite keep track of where my head is at that week or that day.
Man, I have that conversation so often, and I don't know how you've learned to navigate it, or not like it's some hugely negative thing, of course, but like I'm always like when someone's like, so wait, what do you do? I'm always like, I'm kind of like, is it that hard to get? Like, it's like, and that's probably just my perspective of like, I would look at anybody doing multiple things, having multiple hobbies or passions or whatever. I look at that and I'm like, that's so fulfilling. That's so rad. I love that they're doing all the things.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the disconnect is often. Maybe it's just because kind of as a society we're trained over the years of like, you get a job, you do a thing, and you label yourself as that thing, and that's what you do. Like, do you feel like that's what's kind of ingrained in everyone is like
for sure
the confusion point?
For sure. And, for someone like my wife, that's kind of the same situation. So, she went to school. She knew she wanted to become a PA, a physician assistant, went through all of that, and that's what she does for a living. And so nothing wrong with that. It's an amazing job. She does incredible work.
Yeah.
But on the opposite end, when anybody asks her, what does your husband do? She doesn't quite know how to answer that question.
Check back next week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for me, I like kind of having that and being able to kind of say, well, this is what I do, but I also do this and this. And for me, it was kind of a way that I developed probably more in my high school years of a way to kind of battle getting that stale brain when it comes to creativity. So a lot of my earlier days were spent in the music world, writing music, songwriting, performing. And so, you go through passages in your creative space in your career where you just can't come up with that next thing, that next idea. And so for me, some of these other things that I've kind of dove into are ways for me to be able to remove myself from that other passion for a few weeks, a month, a year, who knows how long, and then come back to it refreshed with this totally new kind of span of life that I just lived, and I can now draw inspiration from to do whatever it is.
Exactly. That part is what I love about it, because like you can learn so many different valuable lessons or new skills from several different things, and then be able to return to those. Like, I don't know maybe how to exactly articulate that, even better than what you just explained it, but that is like so much of the value, almost the hidden value that I found in being able to do so many different creative things, is that just like you said, if maybe I'm not feeling this one avenue, or I'm kind of stuck, or I'm kind of burnt out or whatever, I love the idea that I can go get energized from something else, and then maybe in that process have learned something that better helps me break through on that other thing that I was like sort of stuck on for a second.
Exactly.
I think that's like such a hidden value to the ability to like let ourselves do multiple different things.
For sure. And I think if anything, being away from that passion for so long, even if you haven't kind of found this new renewed inspiration towards it, you miss it. So if anything, you want to go back to it just because you miss it. And so with Wizard of Za and doing the pizza thing kind of nonstop for 2.5 years, I started to miss music. I hadn't picked up my guitar. I hadn't sat down at the piano. I hadn't done those things that made up me for so much of my life. And so that was kind of how it went for that, was I just missed it and I wanted to get back to it. Less of I'm feeling so inspired right now to write new music. And so I guess I'm just really blessed to have a lot of different passions. I've met a lot of people and know a lot of people, and not that there's anything wrong with this, that just they don't have a passion. They don't have a hobby that they necessarily kind of spend a lot of time researching and learning and working on. And again, nothing wrong with that. But for me, I just can't sit and not do something. I constantly want to be learning, watching, reading, writing, and using, I guess as cliche as it sounds, my time on earth to really make a difference in my own life and others' lives. And I think those creative jobs and those creative professions are one of the best avenues to be able to make that impact on different people's lives.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Have you ever hit, like during doing like all of this stuff, have you had those moments at all? And I know I'm jumping, like, so we haven't even dove into like the timeline yet,
Sure.
and I'm just kind of jumping in, but like, was there any moments in time where you kind of found yourself in that, like, wait, have I turned all of my hobbies into careers sort of thing? Because I've had to like address that with myself, because I do think there is a difference between, hey, here's a hobby that I just let myself enjoy, but here's also a thing that once I realize I like it and I realize I'm skilled at it and I realize I can do it, how far can we take it? I'm very guilty of that, and I'm not necessarily framing it in a bad way.
Sure.
But I do think that can easily lead to burnout. Like, have you experienced that in trying to do different things?
100%.
Okay.
I honestly don't know a single hobby of mine that I didn't either start to nudge and go that way and abandon it, or actually do it as a career path for however many years or whatever amount of time it was. So I get that absolutely. Like my first intrigue when I either find a new passion or a new interest or a new hobby, you're watching so much content, videos, social media, reading articles, and like the first thought is, well, I could do this.
Yep.
Like I could totally sell this or make this and sell it or share it with the world, or I want people to see my version of that, and why should I just give my version of that out for free when I could do X, Y, and Z with it? And so totally guilty of that. I really get it, but I'm trying to get better with it. Like you said, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but there's also some passions that you just want to be able to enjoy. Like I did the music thing for several years and I really enjoyed it, but there became a time where it was just like, there's other things I love, there's other things I want to do, and music is one of those things that you can carry throughout your whole life and enjoy it, listen to it, play it, write, and no one has to hear it, no one has to know about it but you. You know, I grew up with two parents that grew up involved in music, loved music, their parents. And so I feel like that was a good kind of role model situation for me to look at them and go, they've still been able to love music through their whole lives and I can do the same. And so that was a big one for me where it was like, all right, let's stop trying to make money and make a career out of music. Granted, I went to college for that, but still it was like, all right, time to reserve this as just a passion, a hobby that I really enjoy doing, and starting to focus on some of these other things that I know I really enjoy and want to do full time. So it's not easy, but I totally get it.
Right. So, like, where does this drive come from? Like, let's open up the floodgates.
Yeah.
Let's dive in. Like you mentioned growing up, you mentioned your parents listening to music, all that sort of stuff. Are you from Columbus or?
No, so I am from a suburb outside of Youngstown, Ohio, called Canfield, Ohio.
Okay.
So right up in that Youngstown, Italian, very food-driven town. There's not a lot to do in Youngstown. I mean, we're definitely more blessed than some of the more rural areas. You know, we've got a Target and a mall and all those different things that can keep you busy when you're really bored.
More than my town.
Yeah.
we have a Circle K and a Dollar General.
There you go. We probably had several, so I can't talk too far down on the fact that there was nothing to do. But food is just such a big thing there because there's very little to do. A lot of your time is just being spent with family, gathering with family, so you're cooking a lot. And I think comparatively to Columbus, Youngstown has more of like two central populations that make it up. Columbus kind of seems like more of a melting pot. While you can find all these different ethnicities, there's not like this mass population of them that really has an impact on the city. And so Youngstown growing up, big Italian population, big Polish population. And so that was where things started for me in that passion for food and that love of cooking and sharing with family and friends was just directly from where I grew up and started.
Yeah. So do you identify that as like the first, like that is like maybe the first passion you feel like you had? And like, what was it that made it that? Because I know, I mean, it sounds like music has also been there for a long time as well. But like, what was it about like the food element? Was it like the community factor of that? Like that, like, oh, we're bringing people together over this thing. Like,
yeah, I think it was the community factor and also watching family start doing it at such a young age. Like as young human beings, 1, 2, 3-year-olds, we're instantly captivated by what our parents are doing or what these older people are doing above us, no matter what it could be. Mm-hmm. And so my family was always cooking, you know, just constantly eating, constantly cooking. And so watching my mom growing up, my grandmother, even my dad loved to cook, you know, had his certain things like most dads, that those are their staples. I just loved it, you know, looking back and seeing pictures of myself when I was younger with underwear on my head as a chef's hat and helping make all these different things. There's no doubt that was kind of that first passion, that first interest. And it was the community, but it was also just kind of being able to feel like I'm being what my family is. I'm doing what they do and learning it, and just being able to spend that time with them and have those experiences, I think, is what really kind of set itself in my mind and my body, for growing up and continuing on that passion.
Yeah. So whether due to that or even just outside of, the food element, was your family pretty tight knit growing up? Was this a thing that it was oh, the family's coming together to make food and hang out, or was it just immediate family household sort of thing?
It's kind of funny. I don't have a massive family. Both my mom and dad's families both are pretty small. And so while pretty small, I feel like we were all then very tight-knit. My wife's family, I'm going to guess at this, I want to say she's one of 38 first cousins. Her mom is one of 9 kids. Her grandmother was one of 14 kids. Just that giant German Catholic, rural farm town area family. Yeah. And so while I totally wished I always had that growing up, I also see how little she knows about several of her family members because you just don't see them as much. There's so many of them. You can't spend the time to sit down and really have that camaraderie for several hours with those certain individuals. And so while I always wish I had that giant family, I also love the fact that I had this smaller family where we really got to know one another and appreciate our time together and do all of this.
Yeah, no, I think that's super cool. I do like that idea of oh yeah, okay, might have a smaller family, but that does mean that we're closer. Doesn't mean that big families can't be close too.
Yeah,
but there is that benefit of that. Now, tell me about the music thing. What is it that, and maybe we're jumping too far ahead here, but was it early on when you were hey, this music thing is cool because everybody likes music, right?
Yeah.
What was it that made it click for you where you were oh no, this is a me thing? I just don't like listening to music. How can I involve myself in it?
Yeah, I think it was similar to the food thing with my family, where as much as everybody loved to cook, and while nobody in my family took the food thing to the next level in terms of making it a profession, they all had that music background even more. My grandma, went to Dana School of Music back in Youngstown. She was, the church music director for the longest time. Her husband, my grandfather, was a famous master of ceremonies. So he would tour around with several notable acts and be the one that would go out and introduce them and tell jokes and sing and dance in between acts. And then my dad played guitar. So immediately coming out of the womb, I was constantly watching my dad strumming along to music in the living room. And my mom loved to sing, loved to perform. My uncle loved performing musical theater. And so I was immediately surrounded by it, just like the food thing. And so similar to the food thing, it was this just nature of feeling well, this is me. This is what I do. I watch them do it. This is what I'm going to do. And so I always loved it, as a young age in elementary school. I was the kid that was ooh, let me sing the solo in, the second grade Christmas program or whatever it was. And I'm glad I had that because, it eventually led me on to continue it for quite some time. Did a lot of musical theater, band, choir. I took up guitar as soon as I could. I was 7 or 8 years old, again, just watching my dad playing guitar all the time. And then eventually graduated high school and came down to Columbus here to go to Capital University and their Conservatory of Music.
Okay.
And so music was just as much as food, right there neck and neck as far as my two big passions. But the music one for the longest time, I feel just because I was more subjected to it because of everybody's involvement throughout my family, was more the one that I was okay, I guess this is the one that I'll do as a career now and pursue, not having really delve into as much the food side of things and that passion.
Well, so what was you mentioned singing and playing guitar, was that your thing in music, or was it just kind of everything, or was it no, I want to sing, I want to play guitar?
Yeah, I think it was sing and play guitar mostly. Like you said, everybody loves music. Everybody has the dream of being the rock star. And so I grew up in an area where while there were a lot of other people that loved music, you struggled to find people that wanted to take it as seriously as you and form the bands and the different things that you dream at a high school, middle school age to be able to have. I think it was one of your recent episodes you guys were joking about, trying to find a bass player. Well, it's just whoever can, play the guitar and figure it out. We had the same exact thing. I think that was just like a common issue across Ohio. And so had that similar kind of issue, and then coming down to Columbus, and it is such an incredible music town that people across the country just don't realize. And being surrounded by so many other talented musicians at Capitol, immediately formed a group and started playing and allowing that to take off. So it was always kind of that singing and playing guitar was my thing. But I did enjoy band and musical theater and all those other aspects because I enjoyed to perform, and I enjoyed being creative and really utilizing some of these skills that I was lucky to be able to, be born with and really grow throughout my childhood.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you more about growing up, but I want to dive into the music and Columbus thing really quick because it is a very interesting point, and I do agree. There's a lot, and has been for years, a lot of musical talent here in Columbus, or just Ohio in general, right? What is it you think that makes Ohio this almost for lack of a better term, redheaded stepchild when it comes to? I'm kind of going to label it as the entertainment world in general, because I'll also say from the video production side of things in the video world, everybody kind of tends to look at Ohio and they're like, oh yeah, there's nobody talented there. And if they are, they should go somewhere else. Yeah. And I get somewhat the same sense with the music side of things. Do you have have you ever thought about that, or do you have an opinion on that of why does Ohio tend to be overlooked when it comes to the value of entertainment that is kind of hidden in here a lot of the time?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the lack of resources. You look at places like New York City, like LA, they're kind of the entertainment capitals of the world because that's where all the labels are. That's where the publishers are located. Nashville. We don't quite have that here. We do, and we have some really talented individuals. There's Grammy Award-winning recording engineers, mastering engineers, all these different things located here in Ohio. But like you said, people just don't recognize it. And I think the other aspect of it is they don't quite understand what living in the Midwest is like. I feel like the reason that there are so many really talented bands and artists that come out of Ohio and make it is we all kind of have that blue collar chip on our shoulder. We grew up in suburbia or farmtown USA. Those were your two options in Ohio. And you had this dream at a young age. You watched MTV or YouTube videos or listened to music. I can remember listening to so many artists on my CD player and just picturing what if that was me, or trying to imagine what it's like to be them. You don't get that when you're constantly surrounded by it in a place like LA, in a place like New York City, in a place like Nashville. Not to say those people aren't driven and really want to make it and doing everything that they can to do it. They're in the same position that we are, but we're, I think, a little more disadvantaged in terms of the resources. And so it really takes working hard to do it, but a lot of people are willing to put it in. So I think the easy way out is you should just go to New York City, you should just go to LA, to Nashville, to Miami, to be able to do it. But, if you're like me, if you're like you want to prove people wrong. You want to, it fuels you even more to put in the extra work to be able to go back to those individuals and say, I did it here in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm just going to stay here and enjoy it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's 100% accurate of we can all kind of identify we don't have the immediate advantage of, I can go to this label exec, or I can go to this thing or whatever that might be in those other entertainment capitals of the world. So we do kind of inherently have it in us of we got to do this and we got to work really hard at it. So already we're just all right, nose of the grindstone, here we go. Let's just put our heads down and get the work done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why the populations of Ohio also rally behind their people so much harder when they see them do it, because they know they've probably been in that position before where being a musician was their dream, where being a chef was their dream, or an athlete. So they know what work it takes, especially coming from Ohio, to do it. And so when somebody does it, gosh, it seems like we're behind them so much more than so many other states. We're just, we're loud and proud for the people that really put us on the map and show folks that you can't mess with Columbus, Ohio. You can't mess with Cleveland, Ohio, wherever it might be. And I think that's what keeps me here in Ohio. And as much as we probably all joke about, gosh, I got to get out of Ohio, vice versa, we love it just as much because of that. It's our driving factor.
100%. So when it comes to like your work ethic or even interest in, hey, cool, I love food and that's a passion of mine. Hey, but I love music and I want to pursue it. As you're growing up, like, I know you said like a lot of family members were involved in like musical endeavors and all that sort of stuff. Was there kind of an entrepreneurial like spirit in your family? Something that you like, were you looking at those other family members and saying like, wow, they're doing really cool things? Like, did that plant something in you early of like, I want to pursue things and I can see that it's possible? Or does that like entrepreneur thing kind of come later?
I think it comes a little later, and I think it actually even comes from even more like external family members that weren't my mom or my dad directly.
Okay.
They both tended to work, I'd say, pretty standard jobs. My dad was a software engineer. My mom works in special education. And so music had become more of a passion for them as much as it might have been a dream for them at a younger age. That necessarily wasn't something that I was looking at and going, oh, look at how they're making money from music. This is how I want to do it. And so they kind of knew where the music thing came from for me, but they always joked that I was always at a very young age just this kind of perfectionist, work hard, go-getter. Like, I don't just want to be a musician, I want to be the best at it. And I feel like I tend to be that way with every passion. And I'm glad that I am, because it makes me always want to learn and get better and not get cocky, really be able to humble myself and know where I stand in terms of the ranks, I guess, in the industry. So it definitely came later. But that kind of spirit, that drive was always there at a very young age.
Yeah. So does that drive stay through like as you're going through like high school years and stuff? Because again, those are always formative years for all of us when we're like, we're starting to figure out who we are. Now all of a sudden in a couple years or right now it's time to be an adult. We're usually like, okay, I either need to get a job or I got to go to college or whatever. Obviously, you went to college for music.
Yeah.
Was that sort of like what was carrying you through? Like that passion for music stayed there. So you were like, this is the thing, I'm going.
Yeah, to a point. In high school, to be honest, I never really thought about what I was going to do next. Mm-hmm. Like, I was spending so much time within musical theater, within band, within choir. Those kind of became my three main things. I was an athlete. I loved to play sports, baseball primarily, but those were kind of the three things that I really spent a lot of time in. And so it kind of almost got to senior year where you start to have those meetings with counselors and they're like, are we going to college? What are we doing? And I kind of always knew I was going to go to college, wanted to go to college, but it was like, well, I guess it's music, because I really didn't explore any other things other than music during that time. And going to culinary school didn't really seem like a legitimate thing. I think just growing up where I was from, nobody went to culinary school. It was just like everybody knew their recipes from their grandma's Italian cooking. And It was just something you were kind of born with. And for me, it was the same way. So that wasn't something I was looking at, and I kind of wish it was at the time. Now, being this far along, it's like, gosh, why didn't I just go to culinary school? Right. But it was more of this, I just kind of fell into, well, time to go to school, and I guess I'll do music.
So had you kept the food passion as you got older? Like, was that something you still carried with you, or was it like I used to like that when I was a kid, now everybody cooks, but I just want to play music? Or like, did you gain more, like as you were able to begin cooking your own meals and all that sort of stuff, did you start to toy more with that and still have that like, oh no, this is something I really like to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And that's where it kind of started to take over the music thing. Because then once I was at college, and I was touring and recording also as a almost full-time musician on top of school, it became like a job. And I started to realize that I don't really like music as a job. Like, I like being able to pick this up and do it when I want, and that's why I love it. And so that's where I would start to spend more and more time in the kitchen making my dinner. And granted, I was a broke college kid like most, so putting together some pretty interesting meals. But for me, that's what was fun in it. It was like, okay, you have this, and this, make a meal out of it. And so that's where I think it started to make me really enjoy being in the kitchen more and missing those hometown meals. I grew up so spoiled with the food that I had, the restaurants that we had, my mom's cooking, my dad's cooking, my grandma's cooking, that it was like, you got to start to learn and figure this out yourself and get creative. And that's where that really started to pick up and kind of overtake music as what was going to be that career post-college.
Yeah. So what were you doing? You said you were basically, like, your job was being a musician and touring and stuff. Walk me through that. Like, what were you doing at that point in time? Were you going out with bands? Were you in a band? Were you?
Yeah. So my freshman year roommate was Chris Jameson. He was on The Voice. I believe season 7, made it to the finale. Incredibly talented artist. We had met each other through a Facebook forum before you go to school and you're trying to find a roommate, and he posted and I posted that we were both looking for somebody and didn't want that random roommate experience, and just kind of saw ourselves in each other. It was like, holy cow, this kid's in Pittsburgh doing the same thing I am, like wanting to make music, wanting to explore this as a career, but just doesn't have the people around him who are also like-minded and want to do that. And so we both reached out to each other and was like, this is a no-brainer, let's move in together, and just instantly became best friends. I mean, inseparable, and started an acoustic duo, and had a percussionist that would play with us as well, and immediately started playing out. Again, like I had mentioned, we realized, holy cow, there's all these talented musicians, there's all these venues, there's endless places to play, where back home you couldn't even find somewhere to play, let alone play for people. And so we immediately jumped into that, and Capital being the smaller school that it was, got really lucky, and the classmates and the faculty and the alumni really started to take notice. And so just, started playing shows kind of all over the Midwest, opening for a lot of national acts as they would come through, doing a lot of recording. You know, we were very blessed and lucky to be at a school that had a great recording program. So tons of free recording, which people would dream of, with the cost of recording music. So we just had really awesome resources at our disposal. And throughout my 4 years, Chris left after our sophomore year to go and do The Voice, and then, didn't come back after that. But I continued to do the same thing, had formed kind of a band around me, and we would play behind my name, as Spencer Saylor. So it was an awesome experience. A lot of those bucket list moments, got to meet artists that I can remember sitting in my room, like I said, listening on a CD player to them and going, oh my gosh, how cool would it be to be them? And then to be sharing a stage with them, it gives me goosebumps still. So it was a really cool part in my life. But like I said, I realized kind of towards the end, like, this isn't quite what I want to do. I don't like doing this for work. I want to be able to do this for love, and for the fact that I can do it when I want to just wind down and relax, and do it when I want.
Right. So when you come to that decision, is it like a sure, like, comforting decision, or was it like, wait, damn, like, this doesn't feel like I wanted it to? Like, was it a bummer, or was it like, hey, you know what? I tried it, I did it, it doesn't still feel how I wanted it to. What's next? Like,
yeah, it was kind of a slow music plays you fading out into the distance. After I stopped performing, I started doing a lot of songwriting for other artists to kind of keep myself still in the game, There's actually a lot more money in doing that, which was enjoyable. And I really did that up until I started Wizard of Haw. So that was kind of my way of still staying in it. But it was definitely a bittersweet moment of, all your life you kind of think that's what you're going to do or what you want to do. All my best friends in high school, we all loved music and loved rock and roll and wanted to do that one day for a career. And then just having been able to experience it, which I'm blessed to have been able to. Very few are ever able to really do it like I was lucky enough to be able to. Just realized it wasn't for me. So still to this day, I'm talking again with somebody about doing a show here in a couple months. I just miss it. And I'm like, let's go do a show. It's nice to be able to do that. It's not like I need to book these shows. I need to record new music. I need to do a music video. It's now just, I want to get back out on stage. I'm going to go play a show. And then when I'm done with that, I might not play a show for another 3 years.
It's taking away a lot of the pressure that
exactly.
we ourselves put on the things that we're doing. Kind of like the perfectionist thing that we talked about earlier, right? We can have these visions in our mind. And of course, our dreams of the things that we want to do are always major. So they're always going to look like the biggest things. Then we're going to put so much imaginary pressure on our shoulders of like, well, if it's not how I envisioned it in my head, then I guess I don't succeed at it.
Exactly.
Something that I'm hearing that I feel like is super valuable, that I would love your opinion on, like how much value do you think there is in figuring out what exactly we want out of something we do? And to clarify, like a lot of the times the example I give is like, where do you set your bar? Where do you put your standard at? So like if I have an idea, sometimes my idea just is like a level 2 and I don't even need it to be 10. Sure. There's so much potential for it to be more, but I think there's power in finding comfort within yourself, of almost having an agreement with yourself of like, you know what, if I can just experience this much of it or accomplish this much of it, that is fulfilling to me. I'm at peace with that.
Yeah.
Do you think there's value in that? Because I feel like that's sort of what you're explaining with the music thing. It's like, yes, of course, much more extravagant dreams I'm sure were going through your head.
Yeah.
And you did feel a little bit of burnout of like, I don't know if I want this to be a career. I do like it more as something I can enjoy. But I think there's a lot of value in realizing that about ourselves and the things that we do.
For sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I probably fall victim more to the I'm going to set the bar really, really high I need to get there. And that's, again, that just perfectionist, hardworking, driven DNA that's in my body and makes me up to be who I am. But I feel like I kind of do that and then I start to head up that way and then I get burnout and I get myself burnout. It feels like quite a bit. That's what I'm working on. And luckily enough, I'm still pretty young that I got a long way to be able to get it right. But without a doubt, like you've got to be able to set smaller increments. Like I'm a goal-minded person. I love goals. I think you have to have goals, especially if you're pursuing a passion to hopefully become a career. And so sometimes it's better to set those smaller goals because you continue to be a little more fulfilled or excited about the fact that you hit it. You set the goal at level 2 and you get there and you go, awesome. Okay, that was easy. All right, let's take it up a notch. Let's get this done, right, rather than trying to go 0 to 100. And that's definitely something that I'm working on getting better at, and realizing that it's not worth it. You're going to get there one way or another. Be more patient. I may be the world's most impatient person. So patience is something I'm working very hard on.
Well, it's funny because like I can sit and use that example of like, set your bar here. I'm still a very impatient person too. Like I still am always like, I just want this thing. I just want that. But being able to kind of reel myself in and like, okay, yes. But maybe how I can balance my impatience is rather than beating myself up for not reaching that level 10 faster, maybe my impatience can be turned into some energy that gets me through level 1, 2, 3, 4
Absolutely.
Faster.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, cool. Just like you said, now I'm getting more wins. So maybe I don't have to battle my impatience as much because I'm like, I'm accomplishing some things. I'm making some progress.
And it's definitely more fulfilling. Like I'm going through it right now with weight loss and working out. So, when I was in the kitchen, much more significantly through that initial start of Wizard of Za, working 70, 80-hour weeks in the kitchen, I dropped 30 pounds like that. Probably not very healthy, but just a result of you're on your feet all the time, don't have a ton of time to eat, you're stressed, you're focused on 100 different things. But I enjoyed how I looked. I felt healthy, I looked good. And then stepping out of the kitchen more, it's like I put all the weight back on. And so I started last November back into, eating healthier, working out, spending more time on that aspect. But immediately I weigh myself every day because I'm just like expecting like, all right, we're to the goal today. And then it's like 0.6 pounds. And my wife gives me a hard time. She's like, weigh yourself once a week, weigh yourself once every 2 weeks. Like that will feel so much more like a win. Mm-hmm. But again, it's just that aspect of wanting to get there. And then I leave with more frustration because I only did however much weight loss. And so I seem to do it in all aspects of life. And it's definitely kind of my guru moment that I'm trying to really hone in on and work to get better at, to just take your time, be patient, and the wins will feel so much better. Yeah,
well, it's kind of one of those double-edged sword things, because in a way that's also really, really holding yourself accountable, right? Because all right, I need to check in with myself all the time. Am I making progress? At least you're doing the work. And of course we're going to beat ourselves up when we don't have the exact result we want.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the weird battle there, is like, all right, I want this thing and we're not there yet, but I am continuously holding myself accountable to try and get there and at least make some sort of progress.
Yeah.
So it is such a hard balance.
It is.
Like figuring that out.
It really is. But I'm learning.
Yeah. And that's the value though.
Yeah.
Is that at least you can identify like, you know what? I might beat myself up sometimes. I might not be getting where I want to be as quickly as I'd like, but I know I'm learning something along the way. Like,
and that's what your 20s are supposed to be for. So this is the year I turned 30. So
hey, me too.
Heck yeah. So we're both probably doing as much of that trial and error. Let's learn our lessons, because once we turn 30, it's not okay to do that sort of stuff.
So I've heard. Yeah, so I've heard. When we turn 30, we must be adults at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was that transition period like when you start to kind of leave like the music behind a little bit, and not completely, but we've identified, okay, it was a little bit of a career. I was making some career moves, but I don't like it in that light. And then was it just a direct transition into world of food? And I guess actually, let me ask you this as well. Were you was that self-employment during that point in time? Like, were you making money from the music stuff, or was it still being balanced amongst a couple of things?
Yeah, through college. I mean, that was how I made a lot of the money that I made and kind of kept myself afloat to be able to go out with friends and buy groceries and whatnot, which I was really lucky to have. But yeah, that transition was not quite as abrupt, but pretty smooth. So I went to school for music industry, music business, and my goal when I initially entered was I wanted to be more on that kind of management end. I really loved music festivals, so kind of enjoyed the event aspect of it. And so when I graduated, I went and started to work with the city of Columbus in their special events department. And so it was kind of like a nice transition of, I still got to work on music events because they did Rhythm on the River downtown and the Jazz and Rib Fest, and got to, have a little bit of a hand in, watching over Red, White, and Boom and the Arts Festival. And so there was still like this little bit of music that was still a part of it. But I was transitioning more into events and more into the food things. Like I said, the Jazz and Rib Fest. So big focus on the rib end of things and barbecue, and eventually left the city and went and worked for a international marketing agency, event marketing agency, and my client was Diageo. So a lot of the big liquor brands, so starting to move into the beverage world a bit. and then left there and started with a catering company. And so just kind of slowly dipping my toes into the professional world of the food and beverage industry. I didn't mention it, but all through high school, when I turned 14, I immediately started working at a little Italian restaurant back home. So started as a busser, then became a dishwasher and a server and a manager and helped in the kitchen. And so that was kind of always something I knew I liked. Like I always knew I loved that kitchen food background and doing it professionally. But this was kind of my transition into starting to do it more as like an actual career path. And eventually, once I hit the catering world and I was full food, it was like, okay, I love this. Like the goal and the dream is to open my own restaurant and be able to do that for a living. And so it like I said, it wasn't abrupt from music. It still kind of always carried through. But I'm really glad how it turned out, because I feel like by doing that smooth transition, I learned kind of all the different aspects that make up the food and beverage world, and kind of made me a little more ready to be the owner of a restaurant versus others, because I knew what it was like on the beverage end of things. I knew what it was like on the cook side of things, what it's like for the server, what it's like for the dishwasher, what it's like for the busser. Like I can relate with all those people, and I feel like having done all that through that transition allowed me to really get employees and understand how it all works and where I fit in as the owner of the business and the brand, and having to kind of be in charge of all these people now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like exactly the point that we said even earlier in the episode, was the value that comes from letting yourself try multiple different things. You then get all these different experiences, but all these different perspectives as well. Like even from my side, when I am on a video set as director or something, having spent years of just, myself and my team doing stuff super DIY, sometimes because the video industry has this weird totem pole mentality, which I'm sure a lot of industries do, but like when I'm on a video set with other people that I maybe don't work with a lot or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, let's set up these C-stands. Let me help you set up this light or whatever. They're like, wait, what? but you're directing. What do you mean? And I'm like, oh yeah, like that. But it's exactly what you're saying. Like I know what goes into all of these positions. So I also understand maybe how to lend a hand, how to help. I'm not just going to stand by and be like, oh, maybe we're behind right now on the shoot, so I'm just going to watch everybody do the thing because I'm the director. Like, no, it's like, cool, I can hop in when needed and hopefully like help push this thing along. But it's because I have the understanding and perspective of having done those other things. So it's like, all right, cool. I've got enough of the experience points, saved up. That's like, oh yeah, cool. I understand the value of figuring this out. Or even when it comes to like planning a project, having been, in the freelance creative world for a decade now, I can think about a lot of aspects of a lot of different things, whether it's a business plan, whether it's a passion creative project, whether it's just something for fun. Like I genuinely pride myself on being able to kind of think 5 steps ahead.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, hey, we could plan this way, but there's potential for this to go wrong. So let's have this plan B in place, but we also need this right here just in case to help support this, like whatever it is. And I don't know if a lot of people, and I'm sure it's a mix of, not everybody, again, like we've said earlier, not everybody is doing 10 different things at once and gaining all these different perspectives. Some people just like doing a thing. So I understand there might be a lack of perspective or understanding there, but I also don't know if a lot of people tend to think outside of the moment they're in. And that is like a quality that I feel like I have really, really been able to mold in myself over the last handful of years of, cool, of course I'm thinking in the moment of the project at hand or the idea at hand or whatever it is we're talking about. But I'm going to be having so many other things in mind and raise those questions of like, okay, what happens if this? Or, hey, that is a good idea, but have we thought about it this way? Bringing those outside perspectives or those ulterior perspectives and even ideas to something. And I really do pride myself on that, not because I'm always like, my ideas matter the most, but because I also value when people bring that to me. I'm a person who I love running ideas by people, not just to talk about the idea, but because I would say 8 out of 10 times when I present an idea to somebody, they will offer a question, a thought, an idea, a perspective that I wasn't thinking about.
And something really great comes out of it.
And then it's not like it changes the entire thing.
Sure.
But it's that little extra that I'm like, didn't think about it that way. That's a good idea. Now I can do that.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much value in, again, bringing it back to the whole reason I went on this little side tangent.
No.
It is that perspective piece. So just like you entering further into the food world and the beverage world and all this sort of stuff, being able to begin to lead teams, you're not leading just from the captain's chair just because you got to it. You're leading from the captain's chair, but being able to be an actual leader in these examples of like, I understand what each of these positions take. Sure, I might not be perfect at them. I might not be doing them right now.
Yeah.
But I know how to communicate with that person, and I know how to connect with them. So it's not just, I need this done, do it now.
Yeah.
Figure it out, I don't know. Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can land in that realm.
Yeah. Yeah, it is such a great quality to have something like that. And I think, by you having that, you're going to see endless amounts of opportunity and success down the road. And if there's something that people take away from this episode, anything, I would hope it would be that, is to look at whatever it is that you do for a living. It could be anything. It could be being a nurse. It could be being a teacher. It could be being a chef or a videographer, a musician. It's, okay, if my goal is to get up to whatever position in the industry, you don't just want to go from where you are now to there, because you're not going to get that respect from your employees. You're not going to get that understanding from people and that ability for you all to have that collaborative conversation like you're mentioning, because you didn't do all the other steps leading up that would help you really be able to associate better with your peers and the individuals that you're responsible for. And so I can't recommend that enough to folks is, if you want to be a restaurant owner one day, or you want to get into that industry, there's a lot of people I know that are opening restaurants and exploring that passion with no experience in it, which is great. Go for it. I'm all about people, exploring new passions and wanting to dive into it. But it would be so beneficial of you to go work in a restaurant first, be a busser for a few months, be a server, and learn what it's like and what are their frustrations going to be, because you're going to see so much more success as a leader when you're able to really level with somebody and them get that you get it. I think a lot of people who have frustrations about a boss or about a job, it's that they feel like they might hear you, they might say that they understand, but they don't. They've never been in my position. They've never struggled to pay the bills. They've never struggled to go buy groceries in the world of high grocery prices that we have right now, or high gas prices. They're able to just enjoy life, and they're the business owner. But if you can at least offer that experience and you were in that position, it's just going to go so much further. And it sounds like it's the same way in your industry. And I feel like it's probably that way in most industries. You've got to be able to put in all the work and all the different steps and learn it, even if it's just reading more about it or watching more videos about it, so that you can actually understand and have those conversations and reflect with your employees, versus just this kind of blind, I get it, but here's what we're going to do, because you're never going to see that success out of it, at least in terms of people enjoying working for you. And I think now more than ever, you've got to have employees that enjoy working for you, because otherwise you're going to really struggle in today's day and age.
Yeah, 100%. So going back in, like, how long were you with kind of like, because you said it was a catering company that you were with. And so you're getting involved in more events and food and beverage industry, all that sort of stuff. How long was it before you started shaping this idea? Or I guess maybe the better question is, was Wizard of Za the next thing that popped up? Or was there something else that you were trying or plotting on before? Like, Fill in that gap for me.
Yeah, it was Wizard of Za that was next. So I was with the catering company for 3.5 years up until COVID hit. And COVID hit, and I was furloughed like most in the industry and in the world.
Recent? Sorry,
it was.
For some reason in my mind, I'm like, oh yes, back in 2010 he did that. Like,
it was, but we say recent. That was already 3 years ago, which is pretty crazy too. Right, but I got furloughed and was kind of confused and lost, like most, of how am I going to make money? What am I going to do? What if this industry that I work in never goes back to normal? Or how long is it going to take to go back to normal? Being in catering and events, your primary events are things that require a lot of people to be together at the same time in very close proximity. Yeah. And so I was starting to have this reflection of maybe we need to figure out a different way to enjoy your passion of food and make money and be able to have a career in this industry. And so I started to look at, all right, where is there a empty spot in the market right now? And for me, since I had moved to Columbus, my biggest gripe, like a lot of people from Northeast Ohio, was that there was no good Italian food, especially pizza. We grew up on this thicker Sicilian crust, really fresh ingredients. And then you come to Columbus, and it's not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's this thin cracker style pizza. It couldn't be any more opposite of what you grew up on and runs through your veins and what you just love and always crave. And so the only way for me to ever get that was to make it at home. And so being stuck at home, like everybody else, with a lot more time on your hands and nothing to do but post on social media, I started to share more of my cooking, specifically the pizza. And I really kind of made it a personal passion project during COVID to get better at making pizza and really hone in that recipe of what it was like back in Youngstown. And the more I did that and the more I posted it, the more everybody wanted it, especially friends and family that lived in this area and missed it just as much as I did. And so before I knew it, and everybody's probably heard this story 100 times that live in Columbus or followed my story, people started to reach out. They wanted it. I would kind of get it to friends and family, and then they would post it, and then their friends would see it, and it just became this essentially fast game of telephone across Instagram of seeing it, wanting it, reaching out, seeing it, wanting it, reaching out, seeing it, wanting it, reaching out, so on and so forth, until it was like, okay, I guess this is what I'm doing. I'm going to open a pizza shop, and this is going to be how I'm going to transition into this new world that we're living in. And for me, it was a dream come true because, like I'd said, I'd always wanted to own a restaurant. I got to bring part of my background, part of my history, what I grew up on, to an area that didn't have it. And it was just a really awesome opportunity. And so that's kind of how I got there, but it was stumbling into it by mistake pretty quickly, into the pandemic from leaving my job in catering.
Yeah, which is so cool that is, that's the ultimate grassroots growth example, right? Yeah. You just start doing a thing, people are like, I'm interested in that thing, and then you begin to share that thing with other people. Yeah. That's how I found out about it, is all of a sudden, like, I wasn't familiar with it. And because, like, I don't know, like, the easiest way for me to put it is, like, I feel like I'm so uncultured, even in a place like Columbus, where I'm like, I find out about a local restaurant that's cool all the time. And yes, there's tons here, but it's also people like, you've never heard of that place? And I'm nope, no idea, right? Because I moved here in 2014, so I'm still just, even now, that's years ago, but I'm still like, I don't know what that place is. I've never had it. And people are like, how have you I'm not even from here and I've had it, right? But, for me, I was like, oh, here's another place that it exists in Columbus, and here's a thing. And I would see tons of people post and tag Wizard of Za and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, oh, what a dope place. So that was where my awareness came from, was the social media thing. Like,
yeah, it was a perfect storm because, like I kind of alluded to, everybody's stuck at home. Everybody's ordering takeout. Everybody's on Instagram. They want to try new things. They have no other way right now to kind of one-up their friends and be like, oh, I got this. I was the first one to get this. And so Wizard of Oz kind of became that out of that. It was everybody wanted to try new places. They wanted takeout. They wanted to do something that be one of the first people to be able to do it. And it just created that perfect storm through the pandemic. And then luckily just continued as we got back into normal life and became a brand that Columbus loves and really took in for what it was, similar to like the musicians that come out. They were just so excited about, here's this guy that got furloughed and created a pizza restaurant, and that's our guy, like that's our place. Yeah. And really blessed to have been able to have that and do that.
So obviously that time frame, and I want to talk more obviously about Wizard of Oz. Like obviously during that time frame, we're all up in the air with everything. We don't know what's going on. Yeah. What's going through like you individually, like your mind of like, and I know you touched on it a little bit, but what are you really thinking when it comes to, okay, I just got furloughed. I still want to be involved in the food world, but I don't really know. I guess I'm just going to start making pizzas and posting them. Like, was there any part of you that's like, was there a projection in your mind of like, maybe I can start doing this pizza thing and it could lead somewhere, or I'm just going to make these for fun. And then hopefully when the pandemic ends, I can get back into the restaurant world, or I can go back to the catering company. Like, and I'm also asking like, what's your even perspective on what you're doing during that time? Or like, are you just going with the flow, or are you like, damn, this sucks, I don't know what to do, I guess I'll make pizza? Like
a little bit of all of it. Okay. Like part of me was going with the flow because as much as I'm that go-getter, driven, got to figure it out, get to end goal type person, everybody was furloughed for the most part. I mean, everybody was sitting at home, not getting paid. The unemployment stuff that came out, that was a huge sigh of relief. And luckily that came pretty quickly after the pandemic hit. So that relieved a lot of pressure off of me. But when it first happened, I mean, it sucks, but I was looking at my guitars, like, do I need to sell these? Do I have to start selling off goods to be able to survive this thing? I had bought a house a little over a year before that. It was just scary and unknown. And so the last thing kind of in my mind was, I'm going to take this pizza thing to having a restaurant.
Yeah.
But the more I kind of did it and saw I'm pretty good at this and there's a need for it, then it started to transition into that. And, we talk like this happened over a while, but we all got furloughed and the situation happened in March. And by the end of April, for the most part, I was like opening a restaurant. So, I mean, this is like over 8 weeks, but also when you're cooped in your house, a day feels like a week.
Basically that time frame is technically like 2 years, not 2 months. Right?
The whole thing, it's like all in dog years, and you're like trying to do the conversions of how long really was it.
Right.
So it felt like it was a long time, but really this was all over a short period of time. So it just kind of happened, boom, 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 but was definitely not the first thing on my mind. I was definitely like everybody else, like, how am I going to make it? How am I going to get by? And then luckily, we started to get some relief, and it started to become more clear of like, maybe this is actually a blessing rather than a curse. And I think a lot of people were lucky to kind of be able to get in that mindset and go, maybe now is a good time to take this chance to really pursue a passion, pursue a career I always wanted to do. I've got all the time in the world on my hands. Before that, we all worked our jobs. We got home, we ate, we watched Netflix. We maybe got a little bit of time to whatever it is we love to do. But for a lot of people, myself included, it finally became a chance to go, all right, can I do this? Like, let me write out a business plan. Let me start to figure this out and see if this is something that can be done. And luckily for me, it was, and I'm super blessed and just mind blown every single day that, I'm now able to do what I can, and people look at me in the light that they do in that industry, because 4 years ago I was an ant compared to, the rest of the world in the restaurant industry in Columbus.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you think it's always going to take a global pandemic to get people to slow down and reevaluate what they're doing in their life? Or do you think was that a big breakthrough lesson for a lot of us, that maybe we now kind of keep that stuff in mind? Or because that's something that always fascinates me, Because again, like, you know, we've related a lot over this in this episode so far, is like kind of have that ability to, like, when we have an idea, we want something, we're like, I'm going to break it down into a plan and figure out if I can actually do it or not. And I don't know if a lot of people tend to take that method of like, let me slow down and kind of evaluate if I want that. Or maybe I'm wrong. Do you think people do that? Or do you think it's like, when a pandemic happens, we have no choice. That's when it's going to happen.
Kind of. I don't know if it's like an American thing. I'm sure it's kind of all across the world, but I think we use like dates and events happening as an excuse or a reason to have to do something. Like I think about New Year's resolutions. Like they're great, and I'm all for people having a renewed sense of whatever it is and wanting to make this their goal this year. But to me, what was the difference between December 17th and January 1st or October 11th and January 1st? So I do think, to a point, maybe not as extreme as a global pandemic, people do like need an excuse to go and do it. It's always in their mind. We all dream, we daydream, we have a goal as old as we get. You know, there are people who are in their 70s and 80s that still look back on their lives and go, I wish I had done that, or I wish I could still do that. But we wait. You know, and time flies by. Time is something that is probably the most undervalued thing in our country and in our society. And so a lot of people do wait for a global pandemic or wait for a new year or a job loss or something significant in their life to cause that chain of events and get them out of their shell and into a new passion project or a new career path or whatever it is. And I wish it wasn't that way, because 9 times out of 10, when those people do that, they're so relieved, they're so renewed, they feel so good, they feel rejuvenated, they're excited, their families are happier, the people around them are excited for them, they've got the support behind them. But it's not easy to make that jump. It's scary. And to be honest, I might have been one of those people, because I did always want to open a restaurant. You know, since I was working in that little Italian restaurant as a high school kid, you know, I started to get that dream of having my own restaurant. But seeing an owner at that restaurant that was 50 at the time, I didn't think it was something I could do until I would be 40, 50, 60 years old. And so it wasn't until that global pandemic hit that I went, okay, maybe I can do this. So in a way, I fell victim to that, but I hope now more than ever, with people seeing during the pandemic what they were able to accomplish, they're not going to need those events to happen as an excuse for them to be able to say, I'm going to make a change in my life and I'm going to go after X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. I've become like a believer in the idea that inspiration comes from action.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what you were just saying is like, we most often will wait around until like, once I'm inspired to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
Once I get that spark of inspiration. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, and it can happen, and it can be valuable. But I think a lot of that further inspiration, even from that spark moment, comes from the action we put into it, because then we're going to start learning the things. We're going to, maybe there's some trial and error and we're going to fail a little bit. And we're going to learn something from that and then figure out, okay, what else do I need to do? And I think there's just a lot of value that is often like left covered when we're not just kind of taking the action into something. And that is, I also think, like, kind of why like New Year's resolutions tend to fail, because yes, even though they're putting action to it, there's no like real, it's more so, oh, well, it's January 1st, so I need to do it.
Yeah.
And so we're not even taking the action to be inspired to continue the action, to build momentum. It's more so, I need to do this thing and I'm just going to do it. And it's almost like we don't even evaluate, like, what do we really want that? Like, yes, of course, the easy New Year's resolution of like getting in the gym more and losing weight and getting in shape. Yeah. And it's like, all right, well, maybe the answer isn't just I need to go get a gym membership. Maybe it's like, okay, what are actions I can take that truly inspire me to pursue this? Yeah. And I know that that's easier said than done with everything, but at least for so many things that I do or have done or have tried and failed at and decided that I didn't actually want it that bad after all. Yeah. the inspiration to do that, the inspiration to figure that out or even make that decision comes from just putting the action into it and just giving it a shot. I think there's so much value in just trying things.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I kind of touched on it earlier about, my now fitness journey of wanting to get better in shape. I started that in the second week in November, and I don't know how many jokes or questions I got throughout that holiday season of, why are you doing that now? Why aren't you waiting until after the holidays to do it? And because that's just the mentality, that's the thought. And leading up until that point, I had said in my head several times, knowing, having not been in the kitchen as much, I was putting that weight back on. I was still eating good and making good food, but I wasn't on my feet as much. I knew it was something that had to be done. And in my head, it was kind of like, well, I'll get to it at the new year. And then finally it was like, if I'm going to actually accomplish this and actually do it, I need to just do it. It can't be because it's January 1st. It can't be because it's a new year, whatever it is. It's got to be because I want it and I want to get there. And if anything, I can prove it to myself if I can do it throughout the holidays when you're eating more than ever, you're wanting to lay around and watch movies and stay in from the snow. And so I did that. And honestly, I'm so glad I did. I feel better than ever because I did it. And just again, a perfect example of, if you want it, go out and get it. Don't wait for something to happen that now you doing it is because of an excuse to have to do it now.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing with my fitness journey that I've been going to the gym actively for like a year and a half now. And I was sitting and telling myself over and over, like, oh, you need to go to the gym. I feel terrible. I look terrible. All these sort of things. Yeah. Just beating myself up all the time. And truthfully, there wasn't like this big spark of inspiration that all of a sudden made me decide to go to the gym. It was me taking the action to just hit up a friend who I knew trained at a gym, and I would see him at often. And I'm like, you know what? I'm also going to I'm going to hold myself accountable, because now somebody else knows, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody else can literally open the door for me to come to that gym, and I can train under this person. So now I'm telling them I want to do this. And it took a couple weeks of me going to the gym to really become inspired to go to the gym.
Yeah.
It took me probably a month or more of, going in and struggling through workouts and being like, oh God, what did I do? This is terrible. And it being that thing that a lot of resolutions become, this, gotta go do this. I know I should. So it's inherently a good thing, but I'm not inspired to go there.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's an obligation. I should go. I know it's good for me, but damn it, this sucks. And it took probably about a month and a half, 2 months, until I got to the point where I was like, oh no, I love doing this.
Yeah.
Now I'm inspired to wake up
that's awesome.
and go.
Yeah.
And so again, it comes from that action point, putting the action in. Much like I feel like it was the same thing with Wizard of Za.
Yeah.
Like you doing the action of making the pizzas and sharing them and getting interest from people, then you're like, oh, wait, this has always been an idea of mine, but now I'm inspired directly in this way to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's honestly my next question is like, at what point in time, and I know you said it happened pretty quick, and of course it's getting, social media attention, it's getting interest from all these people, so then you start making them for friends, family, adjacent, all this sort of stuff. How did you figure out how to turn it into something sustainable? Because, like you said, it was just something cool you were doing during the pandemic to keep yourself busy, to, flex some skills, get some reps in, whatever it is, gain some interest. Of course, you're doing it with an intention. If there wasn't an intention behind it, you wouldn't have posted it on social media, right? You wouldn't have been sharing of like, I just want to share this passion with people. When did you, and how maybe, did you begin to turn that into a sustainable thing where you're like, maybe this becomes a real restaurant?
I think it was when people that I respected and companies that I respected and looked up to started to recognize what I was doing and ask me that question. Mm-hmm. It was almost like I wasn't thinking of it yet. And then when North Market downtown is reaching out to you about, would you be interested in North Market? Or, other restaurant group owners reaching out and going, hey, you should come meet with us. We'd be interested in, maybe opening a spot for this. And so that was kind of like the kick in the butt that I needed to realize that you're doing something right, because these people are taking time out of their busy days and noticing what you're doing and see that there is potential in it and success in it. And so that for me was that moment of, okay, this is legit and I need to maybe take this more serious and start to hone in a business plan and start to really figure out how can I make this a business and how can it be sustainable. And so that was really the moment for me, similar to that music moment of, holy cow, I'm on stage with so-and-so who I can remember sitting in my room as a 6-year-old singing along to their music. That was that moment for me where it was like, holy cow, I eat at these people's restaurants. Your restaurant or your place is one of my favorite places to go. You want to meet with me about opening a restaurant? That was really that moment where it was like, okay, I can do something with this because that person knows what they're talking about and has a lot of experience, and let's do this.
Yeah. So you do end up opening a physical restaurant, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So what's that moment like?
Pretty crazy. So I mentioned meeting with several different, restaurant groups and kind of property managers and things of that nature. And one of them was the group that owns Fusion, the fast casual sushi concept in town. And really enjoyed the time I had spent with those guys. We were kind of quote unquote dating for a few weeks, getting to know each other and, bounce ideas off of one another to see if it would be a good fit. And so then started to really start looking at spaces with them. It started to kind of feel real, like we could leave here and this could be Wizard of Za. And eventually, settled on a location with them and started the process. And so that whole experience was eye-opening in so many ways because opening a restaurant, there's so much that goes into it that you don't maybe know about: construction, plumbing, electric, all of the equipment that you need, the permits that you have to get. It's endless. The list is endless. And so it was important to be able to go through that process with people who had done it before, and it was kind of like second nature to them. And then I think what made it so much more just breath of fresh air, incredible moment to finally be open and have it was the pandemic. And so all of like the city buildings, everybody was working from home. And we all know how slow government already works to begin with. Let's all have everybody working from home. And so, this paperwork that you had to fill out, it was still paperwork. This was not electronic. So somebody had to sign it, and then a courier had to take it to this person's house, and then they had to sign it. And then if something's wrong, they're going to take another 30 days to review the whole process. And so we had so many snags and delays in the progress that weren't even our fault. I mean, just things where they weren't understanding certain things because you're not able to meet with them one-on-one like you typically would outside of a pandemic.
Sure.
And so that whole experience and the delay of it, I mean, it probably pushed back the restaurant 2 or 3 months, just made it even more enjoyable and awesome when it finally came and happened. And so it was like, wow, we withstood all of those delays, all those speed bumps. We climbed the mountaintop. We got to the top finally. So just a bittersweet, incredible moment to finally be able to like have it done and look at it and go, all this hard work really paid off.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no better way for it to pay off than you're now standing in your physical restaurant.
Yeah, that's so sick.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, I'm sure you've explained it a billion times, the name. Is it just like, hey, I'm good at making pizzas, I'm a Wizard of Za? Like, or where's it come from?
Yeah, so Wizard of Za was actually an Instagram account that I had started pre-pandemic by a few months. And I loved pizza and Italian food, like I've alluded to several times in this episode. And so I had created this account more as like a foodie account to share the pizza that I was eating. I was still traveling a decent amount, whether it be for writing music or visiting friends. I enjoy traveling and visiting new places. And so it was like, I'll start sharing all this pizza I eat, because I eat a lot of pizza wherever I go. I might as well start sharing it and telling people what I think. And then that's kind of where I started to post a lot of the pizzas that I was making, because, you never want to like clog up your timeline for the people that are following you with maybe something that they're like, whoa, I didn't get on board with a pizza restaurant. I'm here to see your, typical life events as a friend of mine. Right. So I started posting there more, and then because I was posting my own pizza, the name just kind of became synonymous with it. It became Wizard of Oz by accident. And to be honest, that would not have been the name that I would have chosen by any means. Yeah. I love Wizard of Oz. I grew up enjoying it as a little kid, but I really didn't want the name because I thought maybe people would take it a little less serious because it was more of kind of a play on words, jokey type thing. Wizard of Oz is kind of this kid movie. Mm-hmm. But what we were doing was really high elevated pizza, making everything fresh, making homemade mozzarella, the sauce, the dough every day. I wanted it to be taken more like a serious culinary thing. The people I were hiring had gone to culinary school, had these, vast backgrounds, but it turned out, to be a way that we could still kind of play on it in a fun, secretive way without making it all about the Wizard of Oz. And the guys with Fusion really helped a lot with that. They were really good at kind of the wordplay and subtle hints. And then the people, when they got it, they really loved when they got it.
Yeah, that's so. See, when I first saw it, one of my two favorite movies growing up as a kid was Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So of course, when I see it, I'm like, oh, what a cool name! Like that's great. But yeah, I was always interested in like, okay, is there a direct tie, or was it just like, hey, it kind of just fell into place, and it was, why not at that point?
Yeah, but it worked out. I mean, people loved the name. It became like a quick off the tongue thing, and then there were just so many fun ways to work with it. It was kind of a speakeasy type pizza shop. So the man behind the curtain and the little sidewalk going in was painted yellow, and all these just tiny little hints that hint at this experience of the Wizard of Oz. They went through all these tumultuous things to finally be able to get to the wizard. And it was kind of that same experience with Wizard of Oz. Wasn't easy to get. It'd fill up. The reservations would get packed. People would wait forever to get it. But then when you finally got to go through all the secret little things to get there, it became like a really cool experience. So I'm glad it got that name. But initially, gosh, I was so bummed. I was like, shoot, I should have created a new Instagram account and given it a name. But, it's cool where it is now.
Yeah. You're like, oh man, here's the big break in the restaurant thing, and it just happens to be this random Instagram handle that I made.
Yeah.
So whether it's one specific time or just like the time frame as a whole, how did it truly feel for you? Whether it's day one standing in the restaurant or whatever it may be, like, was there a sense of accomplishment? Was it like, all right, on to what's next? Like, did you get to kind of let it sink in? Like, what did that really feel like?
Yeah, I don't know when or if it ever really sunk in, to be honest. The tough thing for me was when we opened our doors, and I don't know how familiar you were with the story, but I already had this wait list of 4,000 people because up until that point, I was making pizza as a one-man show, and one guy can only make so much pizza in a day. And even after being furloughed from my job, I did go back for a brief moment when we could start to return to the office. So I would go and work an 8-hour day at the catering company, and then I'd wake up early in the morning and have made the dough and everything that was needed. And then I'd come home and I'd immediately start going into making pizza. And so I had built this huge list that was never intended, that was my way of saying, all right, well, you asked next, so you're here, and then, oh, you want it? Let me put you after this person. And so opening, it was nice and like a sense of relief that we can make a hell of a lot of pizza now and get through this faster, but it was also like, okay, let's go. We've already got our first task at hand. So I didn't get to really have that like grand sense of feeling. I also wish I had kind of not had that situation too, because I didn't get to have that grand opening moment where you got the line out the door and the press is there and everybody wants to come and try it, and just that exciting kind of first opening part. But also maybe that was better because then there wasn't like that drop, It was just busy from the get-go, and it continued to be that way. We were lucky to be named Best New Restaurant towards the end of the year that year, which was awesome. And so in a way, it was kind of good that we had that situation. But even now, like looking back, it's like, I don't know if I really ever had that moment of like, holy cow, I did this. Because being a business owner and, you manage all this, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You're worried about your employees and their health, and are they happy, and the general public, what are they saying? And you're in Columbus, where they have the Pizza Connoisseurs of Columbus Facebook page, and there's 50,000 people talking about pizza, and there's just a million things you're thinking about that unfortunately in that moment you're not thinking about yourself and what you just accomplished. And so that's just part of being a business owner. You do it because you want to better the lives of your employees and the people that you're serving it to, and all that goes into it. But you wish that, business owners had more of a chance to be able to kind of reflect and also kind of simmer in the moment themselves and go, look what I did. This is awesome. Pat on the back.
Yep.
This was great. I worked so hard. I lost so much sleep, but it was worth it.
Yeah. So obviously, like once it becomes a restaurant, you're not doing all the things by yourself at that point in time, right? And it like sort of, yeah, like the balance, right? You're still involved. Like, so my question is like, how does it evolve from there? Like, where does it go from there?
Yeah. So, for a while it was just working through that list, like I said. But I kind of struggled the first few months of letting go of a lot of duties. First time business owner, the individual who I was kind of not overseeing, but looking up to at the catering company. I've been doing it for 20 years and still wanted to be the one that was doing everything and touching everything and involved in everything. And so that's what I knew. And 3 or 4 months in, I kind of had a wake-up call when, kind of my number 2 person was like, I think I'm going to leave because I feel like I've hit like the ceiling here and I can't go any higher because you won't give me more to do. And so that was a huge awakening for me. And, luckily was able to retain that person and really go, holy cow, I've got a whole team here of people that are working here because they love this and they believe in it just as much as I do, and they own it on their shirt just as much as I do. And so that was huge to be able to like start handing that stuff off and have an evening at home or take a weekend day off. I'm really glad I had that awakening so early, because you can probably think of people too now that are in their 50s, 60s, maybe even going on 70 that should be retiring, but they put themselves in a situation where they didn't give stuff off. They didn't teach people things. They just couldn't trust these people that they hired to be in their business. So that was huge for me. And then from there, it just kind of turned into this sold out every day type spot, which is an incredible feat and a really good thing to have. As much as I would have loved to be able to just take phone calls and people get a pizza when they want, like a normal pizza shop. It's obviously really awesome though too when you come in the morning and you've done the highest pressure thing, make the sale. You come in and 100 sales, like perfect, let's do it again. But towards the end of that first year, I started to get pretty burnout because I had just done this for 2 years, a little over 2 years, essentially by myself for a lot of that time, building the restaurant all through the pandemic, and actually decided to sell Wizard of Za. And so spoke with the guys, the Fusion team, who had helped with a lot of the financial backing of the project. And they were, of course, on board, knew the success, knew the potential of Wizard of Za, knew it was in a position where it needed to have more of them and grow. And I just didn't have it in me to take it to that next step. I would have loved to, but my mental health was in a terrible spot. My health itself was in a terrible spot. I had lost my passions and the ability to do them, the music, seeing my friends, missed out on so many different things, weddings, no matter what it was, and just realized it was the time to let go. And so they purchased it from me and have taken it over since. So a huge bittersweet moment, obviously, because it was my first big thing, and this baby that I had grown and really had made a name for myself in the industry with it. But I kind of looked at it from what we were talking about earlier. I'm young. At the time that I sold it, I was 28. I'm like, I did this. Like, I just proved to myself that I can do this for a career. This was an incredible first one to do, but I've got more in the tank. Like, let's take a year off and just relax and enjoy life and get back to doing what I love. I got married this past year, so that was a lot of the time, that I needed to spend on that. And now I'm kind of at the point where, all right, I'm ready to do it again. Like, I'm working on a new concept. Let's get back into it. So I learned a lot. Like, all in all, Wizard of Za was this teaching moment. It was like I almost went back to college, and Wizard of Za was the degree. I learned all the ins and outs of owning a business, what it's like to open one, all the different things you need to look out for and watch, how to manage people, how to deal with the general public. Like, I learned all those things, and at the end, just like college, you're so ready to get out. I did it all, and then I'm like, I'm so burnt out. Like, I need a break. And so this past year, I guess, was my gap year, travel abroad situation. Yeah. And now I'm ready to definitely get back into it.
And okay. So a lot of that I didn't know.
And a lot of people still to this day don't know that I sold it. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people who were patrons, more than others, obviously realized it after a while. Changes started happening to it. It started to rebrand and become something different for the fact that it needed to be, done at other cities. So you had to turn it into something that could be replicated. But I still to this day never really made that big announcement that, hey, I sold it and I'm no longer the owner. I think part of it was not wanting to get into the feelings of it, like kind of blocking that off and like having that like really sad moment. Even thinking about it now makes me want to like tear up, because I never really like told everyone like, hey, thanks for all your support, but I cashed out on your support and now I'm on to the next thing. And I think the other part was I didn't want to see, because the business was so much built on me and what I had done, I didn't want to see the business get hurt when I left if people were to stop supporting it because, oh, Spencer's not there anymore, it's going to be different, or of course, yeah. I was supporting it because he's my friend or whatever it is. And so that's another part of the reason as to why I just didn't yet. And maybe one day I will, but it's no surprise to me that you had no idea, because nobody really would unless, you just find out through the grapevine.
Right. Yeah. No, you sharing that, like, I feel like maybe I had heard somebody talk about it, but I also wasn't super directly familiar enough with Wizard of Za. Like, oh, it's a thing I've seen, but it's like one of those things you hear in passing, but you're not connected to it. So it's just sort of like, that's a thing that maybe I heard.
In one ear and out the other. Yeah. For sure.
Like it didn't really stick with me. Yeah. And so, and this isn't me being like putting the pressure on of like, oh, let's dump all of it out. But like, and you talked about this a little bit, but like sitting here right now reflecting on it, how do you feel looking at all of that? Like, is it more like, what a dope accomplishment? Because I mean, me hearing the story, I'm like, that's so sick. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter if you grew it into something and then sold it, and someone can look at that as like, oh man, why'd you just leave it behind? Like, sure, whatever. Everyone's gonna have an opinion on something, but like me hearing it, I'm like, oh my God, that's so sick. Like, if I could ever build something, make it, and someone wants to purchase it from me, that to me, I'm like, cool, item off the bucket list. That's so sick. What's next?
Yeah.
Like, is there, now that we're even kind of opening the reflection here a little bit, like, what are your feelings looking back on that?
A little bit of both of those things. Like, part of me regrets it. Less that I like got rid of this thing that I built and it was my baby, and more the direction in which it's gone since. Like, I'll always say I'll always support the decisions that they make, and it's theirs now. I sold it to them. They can do what they want with it. But it also kind of stings to look back on what you built and see it like totally changed and not what you had created. And so part of me wishes it was still mine for that, because I know a lot of the people that I had brought on when I, started it are starting to kind of trickle off too, because it's not what they started and loved and were passionate about. So there's that aspect of it where I feel almost kind of guilty for the fact that, like, sorry guys, like, I built this thing and it was a really good thing going, and then I was kind of the reason that it, stopped for you. Luckily they don't see it in that light, and for them, I think it was just like me, a huge learning point in their lives and a stepping stone into the next thing. I think having that experience and people knowing what Wizard of Za is and was is a huge catapult in their careers, which is awesome. That was kind of always my goal, was that I hope that these people leave here and go on and do bigger and better things because of what they did here. But then also that just, holy cow, somebody just bought what I created, and I didn't know what that was like at first. Like, when I had first started telling like family and friends, and their first immediate thing was congratulations, I was like shocked, because I totally thought it would be like, why would you do that? Like, why would you sell that? You created that. I didn't understand how special it is to like build something and sell it and somebody pay you money for it. Yeah. And so now I get that. And like now it makes more sense when 9 times out of 10 when I tell somebody, they're like, holy cow, really? Like, for real? And so then I'm like, ooh, maybe I should like always try to do this. Like, let me open up a new restaurant and then get somebody to buy it. But no, I'm totally the type of person, and my thought going into Wizard of Za, because I grew up in Youngstown, and these are mom and pop shops that have been around for 70, 80, almost 100 years. My thought was always like, I'm going to die here. I want this place to be open for 50 years. I want to come in and make pizza here every day, and that's it. So that's still the goal. Eventually I'll find that concept that's like, this is me. This is it. I feel really good about this, and this is going to be where I spend my career. But obviously just a really freaking cool thing, like you said, on a bucket list, or just life accomplishment, to be able to go, I built this business and I sold it, especially in, after a year of having the brick and mortar spot open. It's a pretty wild accomplishment that I still haven't quite wrapped my head around and kind of pat myself on the back for.
Yeah, 100%. Well, add me to the list of people that will sit and put it more on the positive side of, like, congrats, that's super dope.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So being able to look back at a lot of this stuff that you've done, whether it's like hobbies, passions, starting a business, selling a business, all this sort of stuff, do you feel like you have been able to, before I ask this, I'm going to preface this. I think a lot of passions that turn into businesses, or the reason that people like you or I have so many different hobbies and passions and all this sort of stuff, is because there's a certain intention that goes into each of them. Yes, the intention can just be, I love to be creative. I love to start businesses. I love to blah, blah, blah. But I think the most value is found in that purpose and intention in doing all of these things. And I think that is a magic key that allows people to be able to do multiple things when you figure out that why. Do you feel like you've identified your why, or a version of your why? It doesn't have to be some astronomical, life-changing thing.
Yeah.
But looking at why have you been able to sit and kind of have this entrepreneur mindset of like, I like turning passions into things, and also chasing multiple passions and having new ideas and all this sort of stuff. Do you have a why? What is that why?
I think it is, I think I do. It's not like, and I'm not confident that this is my why yet. I'm young. I don't know that this is the absolute reason why, but I can say it's a reason. I think it's to feel like, one, I made the most out of my life. I mentioned that I grew up with a smaller family. Part of that is, we lost a lot of family members prematurely due to illness or whatever it might be that made our family smaller. It wasn't supposed to be smaller. And so growing up younger and just hearing stories about those people always made me want to know those people more, and just helped me realize from a young age that like life can be really short, as cliche as it sounds. And so part of the reason that I feel like I pursue a lot of these passions so aggressively is the fact that I just want to make the most out of my life. Like, if I were to sit down and write down all the crazy cool things I've been able to do in my life so far at being only 29 years old, it blows my mind, because I look at it and I go, there's people that, grow old that weren't able to hit half of these things. Like, I'm so blessed. It's such a reminder to me that you're really lucky. Take every day like it could be the last, and do as much of what you love to do as you can. So I think that's like the majority why. And then I think my other why that's just kind of developed over the last few years is I love to feed people, like plain and simple. I just want to feed people. My kind of motto or quote, I kind of started it with when I started Wizard of Za by myself, was keep feeding the soul. I'd write it on all of the pizza boxes with a Sharpie. Every single one, I would sit down for 2 hours and I would just write the same message by hand on every box, because whether it was with the food directly or just like in general, I like to feed people. Like, I like to feed them good intentions and positivity, and hopefully something that really kind of changed their moment for them. And there were some really cool moments through having Wizard of Za where I feel like I hit those goals. Like, those were always the best feelings. Like, if I look back on Wizard of Za, even more than being able to sell it and that accomplishment, I can remember, a few times. One, I had a girl reach out. She goes, "Hey, I got a pizza from you tonight." I probably would have canceled it, but I was waiting for 4 months on the list to get it, so I felt like I needed to just get it. But my mom passed away earlier in the hospital that day, and I want you to know that pizza was so comforting and just warmed my heart and really just made me feel good for just 5 minutes when I felt like the world was collapsing. And so stuff like that would just leave my hand shaking, but was so much more beneficial for me than how many likes we got on a post or selling the business or serving it to some celebrity or whatever it was. That was the cool stuff that stuck with me to this day, and I feel like is kind of my why. Like, I don't want to open a restaurant so that I can be, in the newspaper and talked about and whatever. I want to open it because I want to change lives in as stupid of a little way I can with food and something that I'm good at. And I'm sure you're the same way with videography. Most people who are creative or in any job that they're in, I would hope that people's goal is to change people's lives in some way, shape, or form, little, big, whatever it might be. So that's probably the why, is just to feed people and to also, feed myself and make sure I'm getting the most out of life for as long as I can.
Yeah, dude, I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
No, that was awesome. Last couple things.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned it earlier, and obviously we don't have to dig into details and talk about something that isn't there yet. But what's next? Like, what's on your mind of, how are you hoping to continue to feed people and feed yourself? Yeah. Is there a plethora of different ideas that you're like, cool, I have these several paths that I want to take. I want to get back into music and do this. I want to open a new restaurant. Like, if we're looking ahead, what's up there?
So the last year, I mentioned very early on, I'm not the type of person that can just sit around and not do anything. So as much as this past year I could have just chilled out and relaxed, I still needed to work. So I spent the last year doing a lot of consulting for different restaurants. I've been spending actually the majority of my time back at that catering company that I had left pre-pandemic, helping out the owner directly in many ways, because now I had this experience of owning a business. And so he was able to kind of grow an extra arm for his company over this past year to help him and relieve his stress. So I've loved that. I've loved being able to help these other restaurants get better, tighten up their kitchen operations, write new menus, write recipes for them, operating procedures, whatever it might be. But now, like I alluded to, I'm at the point now where I'm ready to kind of get back into it and be doing it again myself. So I think I've kind of nailed in and honed in on the concept that I want to go towards, which in a way kind of stems off of Wizard and why I started that, which is I still feel like Columbus kind of lacks that great Italian-American spot, at least that reflects the area that I'm from, Northeast Ohio. I just haven't found that yet, and I find that a lot of people from that area, Cleveland, Youngstown, Akron, still feel like they haven't found it. So that's what I'm kind of working on right now on the side, but did have the last year to explore a lot of different concepts and ideas and thoughts, and that I'll always keep in the back pocket. I love to cook. I love to cook all sorts of food, and I'm excited to be able to continue on opening spots and doing those different things. But the biggest passion is that Italian spot. So that's kind of what's next. But I've learned how to properly manage your time as a business owner, especially in restaurants, and how important it is to keep at those passions to avoid that burnout moment. Like, I definitely don't want to get into that situation like I did with Wizard Azah, where 2 years into the next restaurant, I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. I'm mentally drained. I haven't touched my guitar in a year. Like, I'm not doing what I love. So definitely getting back to doing more music. I mentioned, doing a show here in a couple months. So just, I guess all around just getting back to doing what I love, and I'm so excited. We talked about not using a new year as a reason to get into something, but I will say just being in that feeling of it's a new year, it just has me excited for what's to come, and knowing how much can happen in a short amount of time. I'm just like, I can't imagine when we hit December what I'm going to look back and go, holy cow, what a year 2023 was. So yeah. I'm excited for that, and I won't say too much more about the new concept, but people are going to be excited, I think.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I can't wait to see what it becomes.
Yeah.
There's a real loud train.
That's that train that you alluded to it, hopefully not coming through. Yeah. But we've had some great conversations, so it's lasted long, and inevitably the train came back through.
It did, of course. Luckily, it showed up at the end of this episode. So I don't know if you've heard like this in any episodes you've listened to, but I have been doing a new thing towards the end of these episodes where I give the guests the opportunity to fire a question my way. You can put me in the hot seat. This is your podcast now. Before we wrap up, is there any burning question on your mind that you want to ask me?
I think to stick to the theme and my background, your top 3 restaurants in Columbus, like your top 3 spots. Can be formal, can be informal, can be just you've got somebody visiting from town and they're like, take me to your spots. What are your 3 go-tos?
First one that comes to mind is Dirty Frank's.
Okay, classic.
This is also earlier when I was like, I'm so uncultured, I can't remember. I'm trying to think. Dirty Frank's is always like the one that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
Wow, I am completely blanking on anywhere that I would take anybody. There's one that I don't go to that often. It's sort of my and I don't even know, maybe it's not a local Columbus thing. I have no idea, but Kitchen Social.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that? Yeah. I'll go to that once or twice a year when I'm like, oh yeah, there's just something about the food that I'm like, it's really good, but I don't want it all the time. And then, man, I feel like there's a major one that I'm missing. And later when I'm editing this, I'm going to be like, why? How could you not think of the place?
Yeah.
Man. I am completely blanking on it. and I know I'm going to think of it later. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to flip the question.
Okay.
I want you to refer me one that I need to check out.
All right. So probably my number one restaurant in Columbus right now, which I feel like is still pretty under the radar. It's called Sidebar.
Okay.
It's over on East Main downtown, and it's all small plates, tapas. The flavors in the food are just out of this world. Like, you take a bite and you are just transformed into the different countries that this food reflects. It's all like Spanish and South American type cuisine, but still like traditionally done for like dishes that you've heard of. Mm-hmm. The drinks are great, and most of all, the staff is incredible. I feel like anymore it's tough to go somewhere and get a good meal and good service. But knock on wood, I have never gone there yet and had either one not be up to par or even mediocre. It's always been just an incredible experience. So highly recommend. Great place to go with friends or even one other person and just get like 7 or 8 small plates and just pig out.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Love it. Perfectly. Yeah. And that's my third place.
Yeah.
See, I told you earlier, super uncultured, even about the local culture here. Whenever someone does come to town, like, where you want to go? I'm like, ever had
your
Chipotle
guess
before?
is as good as mine. Yeah, that's probably a good thing, though. Like, part of me kind of wishes I didn't enjoy like food culture as much, because then I wouldn't constantly be like, oh, I gotta try that place. Oh, I didn't try that place yet. And you have that like feeling of regret or FOMO because other people are getting it and you haven't had it yet.
Right.
I kind of wish I was like a little bit blind to that world, so that it was very much like, oh, this place looks all right. I'll stumble in here and try it out. And
that's sort of the thing, is like, that's the good part of it, is like, since I'm so disconnected from that, whenever there's like just a random, like, oh, let's go try this place, I'm like, cool, brand new to me too. Like, this is going to be an adventure that we get to go check out.
That's awesome.
Final question.
Yeah.
I end every single one of these episodes with the exact same question. So right now I want you to pretend like everybody in the world everywhere is on the other end of that microphone. They're listening to you speak. So you got a live mic attached to everyone everywhere. And you get one big moment to share something with them. What is it that you're telling them, and what do you want them to hear?
Stop what you're doing and put pen to paper. Like, I guess that's the best way to say it. Put pen to paper. I know everybody listening or everybody in the world, like we talked about, has a dream. Maybe they're living it and they're doing it, but even people who are doing what they're doing, maybe a musician is a professional musician, they might even have that thing that they always wish they had done instead. It doesn't have to be some 9-to-5 in a cubicle type job. I think we all have a dream or something that we want to achieve, whether it be professionally or personally. And I would just say, stop what you're doing and put pen to paper. Just do it. Like, go and do it. Like you said, just go to the gym. Just go get the membership. Just go, start doing the business plan. Go get in the kitchen and play around and look up the recipe on how to make pizza dough or how to make pasta sauce. Like, you've got to start somewhere. Don't use something happening drastically in your life as an excuse. If you really love it, just go and do it. And I think we hit on that a lot in this episode, but I think it should also just kind of be left as a final note, because I know a lot of people have seen what I've done over the last few years and have told me that, it luckily kind of inspired them to do the same. And I hope that change just continues, because they will feel so much more fulfilled, my guess would be, than what they're doing currently, wishing they were doing, whatever it is. So put pen to paper and just get after what it is.
Spencer, dude, this was an absolute blast.
Yeah.
I am so stoked we got to make this happen.
I wish all first meetings were over a podcast. Like, you have no reason but to just continue to talk and continue to get to know one another. Yeah. Great conversation.
Yeah, man. Like I said, it's the cheat code to meeting people. So
you've got it figured out.
Yeah, I have made so many friends through doing this show. And I don't care if that's my cheat code or not. Like, I absolutely love doing it.
Now I feel like it's time for me to find another passion in making podcasts. And
you know what? I'm also
no more passions. I'm done.
Always in support of somebody making whatever it is they want.
Sure.
Whenever somebody's like, kind of thinking about making a podcast, I'm like, do it. Absolutely do it. And any advice I could give you, I'm here for.
And also so you realize how tough it is and the work that I put in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then you can come back to mine and be like, I'm really going to listen to this one because I know the work you put in to do it. I'm like, nice. There's a new subscriber. Great.
Heck yeah. Well, great conversation. And again, thank you for having me. Really, it was a pleasure and an honor. I've been a long time listener too. So it's cool to be on now. I have never been on a podcast yet where I listen to the podcast like before as a true listener.
Okay, yeah.
So this is cool. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, dude, I love it. I've seen you, we interact via social media and all that sort of stuff. And I'm glad that like you were down to not just be the listener and support the show in that way, but be on it, share your story, all that sort of stuff. Like, I've loved everything you've done. I cannot thank you enough for being a supporter of the show. And of course, cannot thank you enough for being on the show. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I don't know, maybe in the future, we'll have to do another episode and we'll talk about all the stuff with the next story.
It's happened, yeah, absolutely. Maybe bring some food too, yeah.
Oh, dude, that would be, see, now the ideas are true.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. I love it. Dude, Spencer, thank you so much, man.
Of course, cheers.
All right. Thank you to Spencer for being on the show. Very fun conversation, and I really do appreciate how candid he was about the growth and eventual sale of Wizard of Za. I do know there, were kind of many questions from fans of the brand on how it was sold and more so why and why Spencer left it and, all that sort of stuff. And I'm honestly happy to have kind of been able to have this show be a place where we could kind of dig into that a little bit and hear his side of how it all went down. And it was just so cool in general to hear how he grew a cooking hobby that started in the pandemic to an actual restaurant. Very, very cool. So I'm excited to see what happens next with him, of course, and whatever he cooks up in the future. And yes, pun intended. But hey, if you want to know what Spencer's cooking up at these days, you can follow him. He's at Spencer Saylor. Keep up with any new endeavors or fun food that he shares over there. Or maybe you just want some cool food pics in general. I don't know. I think he's got that. He's filling his feet up. He's sharing a lot of that still. Wizard of Za or no Wizard of Za. And while I can't promise you good looking or tasty food, I can promise you more fun stuff from this show as well as my improv comedy show, Whose Life Is It Anyway? Or my newest roundtable conversation podcast that's, well, about lots of relatable things called Honestly Same. I can give you all of those things if you want to follow me personally. I'm at Ross Tyson around the net. But of course, follow the show at WYDH Pod. More importantly, though, please double check to see if you're subscribed on whatever platform you check this out on. If you're watching on YouTube, which is my personal YouTube channel where all of my shows and creations can be found, that is youtube.com/Ross Tyson. Same with Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Find those follow buttons and absolutely smother them in pizza sauce. And if you want to go the extra mile, leave a star rating and a review. Listen, I know everybody says these exact same things, but it's because we kind of have to. All of these things truly help shows like mine grow a ton. It helps us get seen, found, heard, and simply grow on the monster known as the internet. So it all truly does help, folks. But in general, whether you do any of that, all of it, or, well, none of it at all, I will say thank you for listening. If you watched on YouTube, thanks for looking. And as always, I'll be back next episode with another wonderful guest that you may or may not know of, and they'll be sharing a story that you for sure never heard.